Hi, I'm Amy, this is The Opinionated Woman. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a video that is very unusual for me. It's a video that I watch a lot of, but I don't film ever. I've never filmed one before. It's a reaction video. So I'm sure you guys have heard of Anthony Padilla of Smosh origin. He's super big on YouTube. He's got like, what, 5.5 million subscribers. And he does a series where he sits down with people and from different walks of life, like doing different things, and you know, sort of discusses different topics and sheds light on them. I've really enjoyed a lot of his in the past. I've shared quite a few videos with different people in my life that they affect, like BPD, ADHD, asexuality, like all of those, but he's never made a video that is specifically to do with something that I have, until last week when he came out with his video, spending the day with people with bipolar disorder. So that's what we're going to react to today. We're going to sit down, we're going to have a look, we're going to see what he has to say and see whether he does any, see if he does it justice, basically. Please be aware of any trigger warnings. There is a lot of dark stuff that does come with bipolar disorder, especially to do with suicidal thoughts and things like that, and substance abuse. So if you are sensitive to that, please give this video a skip. Other than that, let's get into it.
My name's Anthony Padilla, and today I'll be spending a day with people with bipolar disorder to learn the truth about this heavily stigmatized disorder that causes extreme emotional highs and lows. By the end of this video, we'll find out, is living with bipolar disorder a completely manageable hurdle that goes almost unnoticed in most cases? Or are the effects this disorder has on every aspect of life far too psychologically paralyzing for anyone to fully thrive? Hello, Rivka.
Hello, Anthony.
Hey, bipolar 2, same as me.
Joshua.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Tristan.
Hi, how are you?
Right off the bat, I'm glad that he has people with bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 because they are very, very different. So I think, and also people of different genders, because these things are diagnosed and treated in very different ways when it comes to different genders. So yeah, that's important.
What does bipolar disorder entail?
We have very high highs and very low lows, and it's like very dark in the low, and the high point, it can look like I've got everything together, everything's fine, everything's great. Or it can be like, have you drunk 6 Red Bulls? Like, are you okay?
It actually looks like there's a chemical going, like, pumping through your...
I like that she mentions that the manias aren't always a huge positive, because some people see the manias as being the fun part of bipolar, but in my case, the same with this person's first case, is that they have bipolar 2, so we both experience hypomanias rather than manias, and I don't enjoy them. Like, there's sort of an element of like out of control, very agitated, and very like very like quick to respond to things, like very reactive. That's the word that I'm looking for, which I don't find to be very fun to deal with.
For me, the mania is not fun whatsoever. Racing thoughts, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, oh my god, it would be so cool, like why don't I just build a bookshelf? I truly like felt like I couldn't stop, and then some trigger from a traumatic experience as a child or something would come up, or a relationship would end, or I would get into a fight with one of my friends, and then I would get that crash, and then it's... Triggers.
Triggers are a very, very big part, so I really like that they are mentioning those, because triggers really can set you off on a mania or set you off on a depressive episode, and they can come from anywhere. They can really come from like completely, like, you know, something you see on social media, something that happens in your everyday life. You can't really avoid them, so having to deal with those triggers is a huge part of dealing with bipolar.
Yeah, I knew it was gonna happen eventually. I used to be a pretty heavy drinker, and I'm like, okay, when I'm up, I'll drink so I come down a little bit, and when I'm down, I'll drink a bunch of caffeine to try, and that just doesn't pay off long term. And professionals call that self-medicating, which is
self-medication is also a massive thing when it comes to bipolar. We experience a lot of sensitivities to substance abuse. So whether that be alcohol, weed, any other kind of hard drugs, it's very, very common to self-medicate as a technique of self-soothing, which is just not correct.
When did you first start exhibiting behaviors that you now know are related to bipolar disorder?
It really kicked off when I was about 16, and it became very apparent.
And how did that present itself?
Being very angry and agitated and stomping around and having all this energy and not being able to sleep much.
That's interesting that he mentioned, a guest, that he mentions these things like from when he was a teenager, because I mean, I only got diagnosed when I was 30. I had like a depression diagnosis the year before, but when it came to bipolar, I only got that diagnosis later. But some of these things that he speaks about, you know, being very angry, very highly agitated, that I experienced all the time. I just didn't realize what it was, and it can be incredibly aggravating and make it very hard for you to form relations with people, because no one wants to be around an angry, agitated person all the time.
Aspects to having bipolar disorder.
I definitely self-harm with the destructive behaviors, and something else is that like it really does kill people. Like it is dangerous to live with depression, because in my darkest days I do deal with it.
That stat about suicide it's very, very high in bipolar, so I like that they've highlighted that. I myself have experienced suicide ideation. I think my circumstances and my family and other things that have happened made sure that you know, never came to anything. But it's also very common for bipolar 2 people to experience suicidal thoughts but not be able to actually act on it. It's actually more dangerous in people with bipolar 1, because in bipolar 1 you get less depressions, if that makes any sense, and you get higher highs, so you have more energy, if that makes any sense. You have more energy to take your own life, whereas when you're in a depression you can barely get out of bed. Going to have a shower is like the most stressful thing you could possibly do. So it's a very common thing to have issues with suicide and suicide ideation when it comes to bipolar, and it affects both of them in very different ways.
Trigger warning, like suicidal ideations, untreated mental illness, untreated bipolar, untreated alcoholism, like untreated addiction, like they're all very, very severe life or death things. And I think that, again, it's like people don't treat mentally ill people with the same compassion and gentleness as they do people with cancer or physical ailments. Mental illness is a chronic illness, right? It is kind of a thing that you just...
That is a big thing. That is something that I only realized when I was researching a blog post for Bipolar Awareness Day. I did not realize that bipolar classified as a chronic illness, and now thinking about it, of course it does. And because it's mental, so many people hear chronic illness or hear like they have a disability because it counts as disability. And if they can't see it, they don't understand it. And it's so much easier to discriminate against us. My crazy ex-girlfriend, my bipolar this, my bipolar, oh, this person's so bipolar. You know, it's so much easier to demonize us than it is to understand it. And what I hope more people come to realize is that not all disabilities or illnesses are visible to the naked eye.
Did you have a sense of relief?
I had suspected that I was bipolar, and for a while I was afraid of the diagnosis, and then when I got it, it kind of like was perfect in that moment of like, thank God that I know what this is now, that I have a name for it.
Yeah.
I seem to be relating to this specific person very specifically. But yeah, that I never suspected I had bipolar. I didn't really know enough about it. But when my psychologist said that she was going to change my diagnosis to bipolar because of the meds that I was going on, like I started thinking about it and I was like, oh my God, of course I'm bipolar. And I told her all about it. I was like, this fits so many things about my life that now have an explanation. My behavior has an explanation, and I just thought I was a bitch, to be honest. Yeah, I just thought I was a horrible person. So to find out that I had bipolar and that I could manage it and that I could have control over it to a certain extent was really a big thing, because like mental illness is no excuse for bad behavior and treating people badly. But when I was demonizing myself, it really got me to think about what was causing me to act that way, and let me be a little bit softer on myself.
Back to school after the reunion, after all of that partying, like with basically I think a combo of like 12 hours of sleep over like a week, and then like I had the crash and my body just shut down. I couldn't stop crying. I like simultaneously knew that I should eat but couldn't get anything down.
That's another thing that I also suffer with when I'm in my depressions, or I have an anxiety-induced eating disorder, and it's the hardest thing. Like, I luckily didn't suffer with any of the sleep issues that are a lot of the time related to it. Every now and again, I did get it. Now I'm on medication for it. But yeah, the not eating is a really frustrating side effect, and it's one of those things where people are like, you gotta eat, but it like literally like you're like forcing food into you. It's not fun.
My stand-up of it makes dating difficult, because is it like sex? Do you wait for the third date? You know,
Yeah,
or
when
do
you
I
tell
go
them?
initially it's fine, and then as far as like being rejected, if like I'm going on a date and go, by the way, I have a mood disorder, and
that's one thing about bipolar, and like talking about bipolar very openly on the internet, is I haven't had to worry about telling people about it, but I make sure that even if people haven't seen my content, that they know about it immediately. But I did, when I became single, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, this is definitely, I don't know if I'm going to be able to date someone that's not neurodiverse as well. They don't have to be bipolar too, bipolar as well, but like just having someone that understands chronic illness and mental illness, I think that does a huge, is a huge factor for me. And if someone was to be put off me because of my bipolar, that's how I can sort of weed out people that are not right for me in any way.
Take a moment to reiterate that these videos are not intended to diagnose any condition or disorder, and I encourage anyone who feels that they might relate to any diagnosis of the guests in this video.
This is one thing that I really like about Anthony Padilla's videos, is he will make sure that he says, like, this is not a diagnosis. If this sounds like you, go get help. Like, he really emphasizes going to get therapy and going to get help. And I think doing this kind of content, if you don't do that, I think it's really irresponsible. But the way that they seem to handle all of these topics seem to be really responsible so far, which is excellent.
How do you wish people in society would perceive and treat people with bipolar disorder?
as gods.
As gods, worship. We have a God in the room, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between.
Like, what are you talking about? They're normal people understanding a person's problem and looking at it objectively.
X wants to know how you react.
Yeah, the way people perceive it, like we are labeled as, you know, neurodiverse or you know, not being a neurotypical, but the thing is, like, what is typical? What is a normal mental health? Like, what is a normal person? There isn't. So, like, it would just be wonderful if people could see us like that and not perceive us as something to be demonized. So don't use us as a crutch. You know, there's a Katy Perry song that says someone's got a case of love bipolar. Nah, fuck off, Katy Perry. You know, like, treat us just like normal damn people, because we are normal people. We just, our brains work in a specific way, and everybody's brains work in a specific way. I don't see how people with mental illness should be treated any different. I think people with different needs need to be accommodated. Everybody has different needs. Like whether you have mental health issues or not. So I think everybody should be treated like their needs are valid and completely normal, because they are.
When people say anyone with any kind of mood swing is bipolar.
I think this is happening across all mental health labels. You know, I think people are just more familiar with what OCD or ADD is, and they'll say, oh, I'm feeling a little bit that way. And I think that's all okay to use those descriptive terms. It kind of destigmatizes it, where people kind of normalize those terms as just descriptive.
See, I completely disagree with this guy. Sorry, dude. I don't like when people say, oh, I'm quite OCD because I like things organized, or I'm feeling ADD because you're feeling a little bit hyperactive, or I'm having mood swings, I'm bipolar. I don't like that. I think call it what it is. Don't try and just shove a mental health label on it that you don't understand.
You know, if you say that person's bipolar, that's different than saying that person has bipolar disorder.
So it would be a mislabel to say that's a bipolar person.
Absolutely, and it's, you know, only natural. It's categorizing things is how we...
See, this is also a different contentious issue that I am on the opposite side to this guy, which is called person-first language. So you would say a bipolar person or a person with bipolar. And for me, I don't really care about person-first language. I think like bipolar is part of me. Bipolar will always be part of me. I will be on medication for the rest of my life, and I am a bipolar person, and I am a person with bipolar. I don't think person-first language is that useful for me personally.
Who feels like they might have bipolar disorder, or they do have it, but they're afraid to talk about it because of all the negative stigma surrounding it. Is there anything you want to say to them?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think those 3 magic words, I need help, are the most...
That's the main thing, kids. If you are feeling any kind of mental stress, if you're feeling any kind of strain, just ask for help. If you can't pay for help, like confide in somebody, you know, like use, like this video is sponsored by BetterHelp. I've heard a lot of great things about BetterHelp. You know, there are ways, and there are, I mean, depending on what country you're in, there are free mental health outreach places that you can reach out to and get some kind of help, because living like this is not going to do anybody any good service in the end. You know, it's just going to end up making you miserable, and you could actually live a very, very full life with a mental illness if you're being helped by a licensed therapist. So yeah, that's the number one. Go to therapy, kids.
What do you think the biggest misconception is about bipolar disorder?
It's that it's constantly up or down. We sit on the surface a lot of the time. We're riding those waves.
It's not all on or off. There is some bipolar.
Okay, now it's just going to the shout out portion. I think that was dealt with really, really well. Anthony, you did it. You did it, my guy. Yet again, another really great video. I will link this video down below. I do recommend checking out his channel. Like, he really talks about a lot of really interesting stuff. It's not always very serious. I just watched one where he spoke to anime actors, anime voice actors, which is really interesting. But yeah, I think they managed to cover like a lot of like really important stuff and very like humanized. So yeah, that's all I can say. Is this video dealt with it really well. If you want to learn anything about bipolar, I would recommend like go watch the video. It's really helpful. And if you feel like this works for you, please reach out to somebody, because it doesn't have to be all bad. Like, it really can be something that you live with every day, and you just need to be able to have certain coping mechanisms in place to make sure that you don't go down, you know, a dark path, or you know, with self-harm, suicide ideation, substance abuse, etc. You know. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. This was a really cool video to do. This is really interesting. And I'm glad videos like this are being made by people with mental illness issues and without them, so that we can, you know, sort of like normalize it and make it something that we chat about. So if you enjoyed this video, if you want me to do another reaction type of video, like I'm down. Put any comments down below. Give me a like and maybe a subscribe if you enjoyed it, and tickle my bell for notifications. And I will check you next time.